Prabhupada ki, Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. So, first of all, we'll read from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, Uniting Two Worlds, chapter entitled Chant Hare Krishna and Fight. After a few days, more of the people of Bhubaneswar began to visit Srila Prabhupada. One evening he was in his room speaking with several men when one of them asked, "Well, Swamiji, actually, what is God?" Srila Prabhupada opened his eyes widely in disbelief. "What is this?" he said. "You are from India and you do not know what is God. This is the degradation of Kali Yuga." Srila Prabhupada confirmed in his continued his sharp criticism, and then explained that Indians have the special benefit of Vedic literature and culture. Therefore, every Indian should know God. Prabhupada gave his first public lecture the next evening, and about 150 people attended. He began his lecture, "Last night, some gentlemen questioned, 'What is God?' Srila Prabhupada explained that Sri Bhagavan personally appears in our country, Bharatvarsha, and leaves his instructions, which have been accepted by the Acharyas. India," Prabhupada explained, "is especially favoured since God personally incarnates there and imparts his instructions. But at the present moment," Prabhupada continued, "our young men are inquiring, 'What is God?' So why has this happened? It has happened because we are making progress toward animal civilization. Anyone with a bodily conception of the self," Prabhupada said, "anyone thinking of their identity in relation to family, country or race, was no better than a cow or an ass, according to Vedic Shastra." He repeatedly warned that Indians should be careful of sinking to the position of having to ask what is God. Unfortunately, when he called for questions after his lecture, it was the same thing. "I want to know the meaning of the word Krishna," a man asked. "You do not know what is the meaning of Krishna?" Prabhupada retorted. "You do not know?" The man said something in Oriya and then said in English, "The etymological meaning." "Krishna," said Prabhupada, "means all attractive." Krishna. Krishati, yes. Krishna means the all attractive. And besides that, you do not know Krishna? This is a difficulty, that our people have become so degraded that they are asking, what is God? What is Krishna? Someone has studied the 7th canto of Ramayana, but now he's asking, whose father is Sita? So this is the position. We are born in the country where Krishna spoke everything, and now we are asking, what is the meaning of Krishna? What is God? This is a position, very degraded position. So Srila Prabhupada, he is saying this because sometimes people, in the name of being a spiritual leader, will speak from Bhagavad Gita, but they'll give some distorted meaning, and therefore all it does is, rather than illuminate people, it just creates confusion. I had some experience with this also, that some people were reading Bhagavad Gita and they asked me various questions, and I asked them, "What Gita are you reading?" And then they told me the translation of it. So I said, well, I can only answer from Prabhupada's translation of the Gita. And Prabhupada is authorized as a representative of the chain of spiritual masters coming all the way from Krishna. So therefore, this analogy of collecting a mango, if you're collecting fruit from an apple tree, often what you do is you shake the tree, right? And then the apples will fall. Sometimes this is what people do, but you don't do that with mango. People climb up the tree, and there's a chain of people there, and they'll hand it down very carefully because it bruises easily, and then they place it nicely in the basket, and then it's undamaged. So the bona fide representative of Krishna consciousness, Sanatana Dharma, Vedic knowledge, spiritual knowledge, coming from Krishna, as spoken in Bhagavad Gita, then they're the personalities who will give it undamaged, unchanged, who are carefully handing it down from spiritual master to disciple, and then that bona fide disciple, he becomes a spiritual master. And so in this way it's unchanged, but because some people want to use the fame of Bhagavad Gita to promote their own distorted philosophies and to manipulate or monopolize people, then they use the fame of Bhagavad Gita, and people read it thinking it's Bhagavad Gita or some other Vedic literature, and they come away asking questions. But when you read Bhagavad Gita, then it's quite clear as to who is Krishna. So it means whatever they've read, it's not actually the words of Krishna. So this is what Prabhupada is on about, is that people are being deluded by so-called spiritual knowledge. And India is famous for its spiritual knowledge. But even in Kali Yuga, the age we're living in, which is the winter age, then that spiritual knowledge was becoming lost. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 13, entitled Rahugana Converses with Jad Bharat, Text 4. Nivasa Toya Dravinatma Buddhis. Nivasa Toya Dravinatma Buddhis. Tatas Tato Davati Bo Atavyam. Tatas Tato Davati Bo Atavyam. Kvachich Cha Vatyotita Pamsu Dumra. Kvachich Cha Vatyotita Pamsu Dumra. Disho Na Janati Rajas Valaksha. Disho na janati rajas valaksha. Nivasatoya dravinatma buddhis. Nivasatoya dravinatma buddhis. Tatas tato davati bo atavyam. Tatas tato davati bo atavyam. Kvachich chat vatyotita pamsudumra. Kvachich cha vatyotita pamsudumra. Disho na janati rajasvalaksha. Disho na janati rajasvalaksha. Nivasatoya dravinatma buddhis. Tatas tato davati bo atavyam. Kvachich chavatyotita pamsudumna dumra. Disho na janati rajasvalaksha. Let's chant.
Kvachityavatyotitapam sudumra Dishona janati rajasvanaksha Nivasa Soya Water Dravina
Buddhi. Who considers these material things the Atma or self? Tata tata, here and there. Davati, he runs. Bo, O king. Atavyam, on that forest path of material existence. Kvachit cha, and sometimes. Vatya, by the whirlwind. Utita, raised. Pangsu, by dust. Dumra, appear smoke-coloured. Disha, the directions. Na, not. Janati, knows. Rajavala Aksha, whose eyes are covered by the dust of the whirlwind, of the wind, or who is captivated by his wife during her menstrual period. Translation. My dear king, the merchant on the forest path of the material world, his intelligence victimized by home, wealth, relatives, and so forth, runs from one place to another in search of success. Sometimes his eyes are covered by the dust of a whirlwind. That is to say, in his lust he is captivated by the beauty of his wife, especially during her menstrual period. Thus his eyes are blinded, and he cannot see where to go or what he is doing. Let's repeat. My dear king, the merchant on the forest path of the material world, his intelligence victimized by home, wealth, relatives and so forth, runs from one place to another in search of success. Sometimes his eyes are covered by the dust of a whirlwind. That is to say, in his lust, he is captivated by the beauty of his wife, especially during her menstrual period. Thus his eyes are blinded, and he cannot see where to go or what he is doing. Sri Prabhupada's purport. It is said that household attraction resides in the wife because sex is the centre of household life. Yan mai tunadi grihamedi sukham itucham. Materialistic person, making his wife the centre of attraction, works very hard day and night. His only enjoyment in material life is sexual intercourse. Therefore, karmis are attracted to women as friends or wives. Indeed, they cannot work without sex. Under the circumstances, the wife is compared to a whirlwind, especially during her menstrual period. Those who strictly follow the rules and regulations of household life engage in sex only once a month at the end of the menstrual period. As one looks forward to this opportunity, his eyes are overwhelmed by the beauty of his wife. Thus it is said that the whirlwind covers the eyes with dust. Such a lusty person does not know that all his material activities are being observed by different demigods, especially the sun god, and are being recorded for the karma of one's next body. Astrological calculations are called Jyoti Shastra because the Jyoti, or effulgence, in the material world comes from the different stars and planets, and the science is called Jyoti Shastra, the science of the luminaries. By the calculation of Jyoti, our future is indicated. In other words, all the luminaries, the stars, sun and moon, witness the activities of the conditioned soul. Thus he is awarded a particular type of body. A lusty person whose eyes are covered by the dust of the whirlwind of material existence does not at all consider that his activities are being observed by different stars and planets are being recorded. Not knowing this, the conditioned soul commits all kinds of sinful activities for the satisfaction of his lusty desires. Om Jnanatamandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakrimalatamina Tasma Shigurave Namaha Akam Kroti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Grimna Kripatamam Vande Shigurim Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So there's quite a few interesting points here. Some words in the verse itself. So we may have seen this word toya somewhere before. Anyone remember? Patram pushpam phalam toyam. Toya means water. And then this atma buddhi, the word Buddha means intelligence, and here is talking about who considers these things, material things, to be the self. So sometimes the word atma always refers to the self, but there's three considerations of the self. Does anybody know what they are? Sometimes there's different conceptions of the self.
Physical, subtle and spiritual.
Yeah, physical, subtle and spiritual. So the subtle is more of the mental intellectual concept of the self, which is not to be confused with the soul, which is even more subtle than the mind or intelligence. And so this type of atma buddhi, on the highest level, is actually considering the atma to be jivatma, the soul. So when we refer to ourselves sometimes as the body, we do that for the sake of conversation. Sometimes we refer to our body, or sometimes we refer to ourselves as being the body. So even one who may not be in the bodily concept of life, but they may say something, or like we say, my knee hurts. Right? We don't say, my knee hurts. We point to our foot. This old, someone says, okay, point to your foot, point to your foot. Point to your ear, point to your ear, point to your nose, point to yourself. No, you point to your chest. So if we're thinking with the body, but we have a body, just like if you're driving a car and you're driving along, minding your own business, and then some inattentive driver comes and whacks into the side of you. Sometimes they call it T-boning or side swiping or something like that. So somebody comes in, some inattentive driver, and then you get out the car, you're furious, oh, you've hit me. It didn't hit you at all, it hit the car. So because we identify with the car, we're very much attached to the car, then that attachment, because it's giving us so much pleasure, and our attention is focused on that, we work hard, we spend our time to make money, we're cashing in our time to get money to buy some object. And what happens, you were looking at the objects through the eye of desire. Once again, we're talking about lust here. And then we see something, we think, okay, according to my pocket, and I can afford this. And then we lust after it. And then we go to buy it, and someone just got there before you and bought it. And then, damn it, I need to look again. So this is frustrated lust turns to anger. When we don't get our desire fulfilled, then it turns to frustration, which leads to anger. We'll come to this in a minute. And then we go out looking again, and we find it. So after much trouble of working hard, and then searching hard to buy it, and then maybe not being able to buy it outright, having to pay for it, and then somebody smashes into it, and you know that your insurance isn't going to completely replace it, and there's so much investment of consciousness and time into that, so when someone smashes into it, we become very distressed. Not even, we didn't physically perhaps get any injury whatsoever, but mentally we're very distressed because we've become attached to it. So similarly with the body, when our consciousness is focusing on the body, then something happens to the body, then it's a big inconvenience to our plan to enjoy in the material world. Like someone may harm us in some way. We have Miseries or difficulties coming from three different sources, which is our own body and mind. Sometimes you have a plan to enjoy, and then what happens, you get a cold, or you get coronavirus, or something happens, and then you suffer for it, and perhaps because you're suffering you can't attend some function that you were hoping to attend, or everything looks okay, and then just as you're on the way out the door you get a blinding headache, and then perhaps you might decide you're going to go along and show face, but you're not really enjoying. So these things can happen, or perhaps everything's very good and you get into some intoxication and then it just doesn't go the way you hoped it would go. Like sometimes we make plans to enjoy and someone else may create a disturbance. If anyone's ever been to a party and then a fight breaks out and it really brings a downer on the atmosphere, or a wedding, how many weddings have gone by without a fight or an argument? Or a New Year gathering of the family. This is sometimes happening. The family's okay to see each other for a little while, and then after some time all the old war wounds get opened up. So we have difficulties or miseries arising from other living entities, natural phenomena such as weather, etc., and our own body and mind. Or yet still we're trying to enjoy this body as a self. So when we refer to the body as a self, then we do line ourselves up for not such a great time, because the body certainly can give some pleasure, but its pleasure is limited. Like, how much pleasure can I get from my little finger? Maybe I can scratch my ear or something like that. You can't even roll a chapati with it. And what can we do with it? But if it gets jammed in a door, then certainly it can bring some attention to the pain aspect. So the body is a facility which, when it's used in a particular way, according to the Bhagavad Gita, then actually it can be a source of becoming free from entanglement in the material world. But if you use it simply to enjoy the senses, then it brings about karma bandhana, bondage to the law of karma. And that may be a mixture of good reactions and bad reactions. If our karmic activity is performed according to the Vedic rites and rituals, like here it's talking about recommended sex life for householders is once a month at a certain period of time for conception of children. Otherwise, then that is simply putting us in the bodily concept of life more and more. And when we're in the bodily concept of life, when we try to take so much enjoyment out of the body, personally speaking, I remember when I was a teenager, I was quite attached to intoxication, but I kind of came to the realization that all I'm enjoying is wasting my own brain, wasting my own good health. And why do we take intoxication? Because we're not really too keen on the reality which is in front of us. But then when we take intoxication, we become even less fit to understand or overcome or make a plan to have a better reality. So unfortunately many people get caught in this, and particularly if they don't like their work and then at the weekend they've got 48 hours to get smashed and forget it all. And then what happens is they wake up on a Sunday or Monday morning with such a hangover that never again, I'm never doing this again, because they feel so terrible. This is what we have to do to alter our reality to get by. But then what happens is the week goes by, and by the time Friday comes we're feeling better, and then we dive in the deep end again. This is called Bhoga Tyag, enjoying and then renouncing. We enjoy so much, and then to the point where the enjoyment is no longer enjoyment. And then when it gets to that point we have to renounce for a while to gather strength so we can go and enjoy again, and then it gets too much, we renounce. So this is just a vicious cycle really of not really enjoying. It's actually just bobbing up and down on the waves of material life. So, and one can take it to a more subtle level where one becomes perhaps less attached to the body's opportunities for pleasure, but more interested in intellectual pursuits. And this can be another entanglement where, I remember there was one of our friends, she worked as a nurse in Stirling University, and she used to organise a programme there where we would go and chant and give talks on Bhagavad Gita and give out prasad. And there was one chap that she introduced us to that he'd been in the university for many years, and he got a degree, and then he got another degree, and basically he became institutionalised, where he didn't want to leave the institution. He just wanted to keep on pursuing intellectual pursuits. By the time he got to one degree, he felt like his knowledge wasn't satisfied, so he had to get another degree, to the point where he became kind of housebound on the campus. He really didn't want to even leave the campus, because that became his kind of safe place, and he was living just in a kind of mental world, not reality. Of course, he's very knowledgeable in so many material things, but ultimately it wasn't liberating for him. He was becoming chained by it. And ultimately, what is that knowledge? We have to consider, what is that knowledge? The knowledge is only pertaining to the material world, which is a temporary place where the soul is residing. It's just one chapter. This life is just one chapter in the book. So beyond that, physical and intellectual gratification is a higher type of pleasure called ananda, which is when the soul connects with the Supreme Soul. And when we do that, then we can give up the lower pleasures. So this is called paramandrisva nivartate. We can try to give up such engagements of the senses interacting with the sense objects, but if we're still attached to it, if we don't have a higher engagement, then we'll still be attached to it, even though we may not physically be doing it. So, for example, you may give up, say someone's smoking. Anyone here ever smoked? Anyone ever gave it up? Did you smoke? No? I thought you had your hand up. Didn't think you had. Huh? One, that was enough. Just see, the most intelligent person in the room. That's a sign of intelligence. That one hears, in the material world, there's different classes of intelligence. One hears that something causes suffering, and they decide, oh, I'm not getting involved in that. If it's going to make me suffer, why should I get involved in that? So that's called first class intelligence. The second class intelligence is what?
One hears about it and one sees other people doing it and suffering.
And they decide, okay, I'm not getting involved. Just like, perhaps you never smoked, but maybe your mum or dad smoked, or a friend, and you realise that it doesn't look like they're getting a lot out of that. It's costing them a lot of money. What's the prospects of it? Is bad health or short life, that can be there. So we think, okay, that's not for me. And then third class intelligence. Experience it, yeah. So you hear that something is a cause of suffering, you see that others are engaging it and they're suffering, you think, well, I might be different, let me just try it out. So let's see what I'm missing. And then you try it out, and then you think, yeah, this is pretty nasty actually. What are people thinking this is a source of pleasure for? It's like the first time somebody gave me a beer, I thought, just like, is this beer or somebody's put rusty water in this for a joke? And I had to pour it out and smell it. And then my friends were laughing, so I had to kind of put a bit of bravado on and take it. But I thought, this is rancid, this is horrible. I'd rather have a bottle of orange juice or something. But to be part of the peer pressure is there that you have to man up, or whatever else ladies say. I don't know if they have a similar saying. You have to woman up. And then that's not enough, you got to actually start taking shorts. What would you call it? Shorts or shorts?
Shots.
With an R or without? Without shots, right? And of course, you're enjoying so much to a certain point that you end up enjoying it backwards. You're throwing it up. You would think, having such a great time. You want another drink? And then you're thinking, I should or should I not? And sometimes you're not even thinking, you just say, yeah, sure, you're enjoying so much, let's have more. And then, make way, go to the toilet. And then you're shouting for Huey down the big white telephone. And and then you come back out, and then after a little while you try to recover and you try to enjoy again, but the game's over for the night. You know, it's just, you've had your enjoyment for the night, and it's just that little bit extra, it's too much. And this happens also, sometimes people are blinded by lust for sex, that even sometimes they know that the person they're going to engage in sex with has got some disease, but they've got so worked up, so blinded by their lust, they can't even stop themselves. And that happens. So there's... Oh, sorry, we're going back to, what was it we were saying again? Jav, I think you can remember.
It's intelligence, spiritual intelligence.
Yeah. Third class intelligence, that's right. Thanks, Pura. It's the power of brahmachari life, good memory. So the third class intelligence is someone who's also experienced it, and then they give it up, and then it's explained it doesn't even go to fourth class, it goes to 10th class intelligence. It's like, in order to show how much less intelligent it is that we hear the material world, and as a place of suffering, we see that others are suffering. We suffer ourselves, but still we don't change. We don't give it up. We don't look for a way out of it. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, an intelligent person doesn't like to suffer. So in other words, this means, nobody likes to suffer, but in the sense that an intelligent person seeks out the sources of what is causing their misery, and they try to eliminate those sources. So this is called Buddha Yoga, engaging your intelligence in such a way as to come to the conclusion what is good for us and what is not good for us, what is pravritti-cha and nivritti-cha, what is to be accepted, what is good for us, and what is to be rejected. So this is explained in the Ishopanishad, to understand the path of nescience and knowledge side by side. Does anybody know the Sanskrit for that one? Vidya cha vidyam chayam amritam. I can't remember it. Anyway, vidya means knowledge and avidya means ignorance. So one has to know the path of knowledge and ignorance side by side. So just like perhaps if, say someone's a rally driver, then they familiarise themselves with the course beforehand and say, okay, these are some of the dangerous parts of the course, so you have to brake at this part. You know, if you go too fast, you're going to come off and hit a tree, something like that. And these parts here, this is when you can accelerate. So in this way, we learn what are the things we can accelerate, put the foot down on the gas in life, and what are the things which we must put the brakes on. And this way, we can actually get the best out of the human form of life. There's no doubt we can enjoy the senses, we can enjoy intellectual pursuits and things like that. But coming to Krishna consciousness doesn't mean to say we have to give these things up, actually. We just have a different thing to engage the senses, engage the mind, engage the intelligence in. So the faculty of the mind is to accept and reject. So everybody has that. I've made up my mind, I've changed my mind. It's me, it's my mind, I can make it up, I can change it, I can choose what to do with it. I'm not the mind. Sometimes we get caught up in the mental platform, and then someone might come along and say, Prabhu, you're just on the mental platform, just go and do it. Mental platform also means to be very indecisive. So some devotee may come along and we're like stuck, not knowing what to do and what not to do. And someone say, just do this. And then if we have some trust in them, then we'll say, okay, that's good. I've experienced that personally quite a few times. Is I speak to some senior devotee and I've got some problem which is bewildering, and I say what to do. And they just make it simple because they've already traversed that path long time before me and many times before me. And because I trust that person, or persons, there are a few persons which I take instruction from, then I think, yeah, that person's got more experience. And you actually know it's because it just becomes clear when a person speaks it to you. It just becomes clear, yeah, this is the thing to do here. Of course it is. And that's because the person is speaking from a platform of vijnana. So vidya, as we're saying, is knowledge, or jnana. And this jnana becomes vijnana, or realized knowledge, when it's actually put into practice. Just like someone may go to the library and get a book out on swimming, or you might go on the internet and you find out how it is. If you've never swam before, you think, okay, you can do this kind, you can do the breaststroke or the crawl or the butterfly or the backstroke. These I know so much about swimming. And then you're standing on the shore of the banks of the river, just telling everybody, you're not doing that properly. You know, that's not a proper backstroke. That's some kind of hybrid speculative stroke that you're doing, but the person who's doing the stroke is in the water and they're swimming. They might not be doing it perfectly, but they're in there and their head's above the water. So that's sometimes what it's like in Krishna consciousness. We can read so much, but really when we put it into practice, that's when it becomes valuable. So we have to be careful that when the devotees are performing devotion service, we don't take it upon ourselves to become their critic, because they say when you're pointing one finger at somebody, Felix, there's 3 pointing at me. So if I'm picking a fault on you, there's actually 3 faults at me. So yeah, it's we all have faults, no doubt about it. Kali Yuga is a notion of faults, that's already mentioned in the Bhagavatam. It's a notion of faults, so it doesn't make us intelligent to find a fault in somebody. It's obvious. It's easy. Everyone can find faults, if we want. We just spend a few minutes with somebody before we've got a list of faults, if we want to find them. And Radhanath Maharaj, he makes a very nice comment. He says, in a field of flowers, a fly will find one piece of stool. You'll ignore all the flowers and you'll find one piece of stool, and that'll be his meditation. That's his taste. That's his rasa. But in a field of stool, certain places in India, the public toilets are actually very public. It's a field. And and you may say, well, who cleans it up? The hog. That's what his dharma is. He comes and cleans it up. So you may be there in a stool field, and there may be one flower in the whole field of stool, but the honeybee will just go straight to the flower. He ignores all the stool. So that is our choice. Do we want to be a stool fly or a honeybee? And you say, yeah, but this person's such a whatever it is. Well, never mind what they are. That's their life. That's self-realization, means they have to realise that themselves. Our self-realization isn't pointing out all the faults in everybody else. It's looking at our own and thinking, okay, how am I going to improve? So Krishna consciousness is for self-improvement. We'll look at chapter 16 of the Bhagavad Gita, Divine and Demonic Natures. We can see the qualities of the divine, and we can see, okay, we may have some of those, and others we have to aspire for, and we can see the qualities of the asuras, of that which is not divine or demoniac, and we see, okay, I've got some of them as well. So as we practice Krishna consciousness, and see, it comes automatically, but that doesn't mean to say that we don't apply our intelligence. It doesn't mean to say that we don't make an effort to be tolerant. It's not that we'll just chant Hare Krishna, it'll all happen. That's a cop-out. It will happen, but we have to also try. We have to make some effort. So in this verse here, it's explaining about how the living entity is controlled by lust. This is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Their intelligence is covered by lust, and here it's saying that the man was attracted to his wife, especially during the menstrual period. In the animal kingdom, we see there's certain times where the animals mate. Different species have got certain types of mating times, or what's the other name for that? There's another term for that. Mating season, yeah. So just imagine if it was the same for humans, that 1 or 2 months a year it was like mating season, then there'd be like millions of babies all at one time. The hospitals the maternity wards would be totally chock-a-block, and then there'd be nothing to do for 11 months. So by Krishna's arrangement, then the humans can have children at any time. And so in the animal kingdom, then the animals like about their business as usual, but then at a certain time of the season, then some of the animals go wild because they catch the scent, like a deer. The male deer may catch the scent of a female deer, and then they start fighting each other to be like alpha, like the top dog of the herd. So this is going on, and it's also going on to a certain degree in the human society. So there's certain times when that attraction becomes stronger, and at that point one's lust is uncontrollable and one's eyes are blinded. Also, the sitting places of lust are, can anyone remember?
Mind, the senses, and the intelligence.
Yeah, but you've got all the answers today. Thanks. The mind, the senses, and intelligence. So the mind becomes cloudy, the intelligence becomes lost, and the senses, they're in control. It's just like you're riding a carriage pulled by 5 horses. We see that painting in the Bhagavad Gita. And the reins are the...
Mind.
And what's the intelligence? Driver. And the passenger is? The soul. That's right. So, if the intelligence lets go of the reins, like sometimes people say, "Oh, I just want to be free. I just don't want to have to be governed by any kind of regulation or any type of principle. I just want to do what I want to do and just let the mind do whatever it likes." They think this is a type of freedom. But it's not actually. What it means is it's going to lead us to disaster. But using the intelligence to discriminate between what is an action which is going to bind us, the material world, and what is going to liberate us, what is the motivation we should have for activities, using intelligence like that is what's going to liberate us. So there's no country in the world has ever become liberated in a war simply by sitting back and doing nothing. They had to fight for their freedom, didn't they? So similarly, we have to fight for our freedom too. We have to fight against the senses, fight against the mind. Now, fighting against them means that we engage its senses and engage the mind. And back to yoga. In this way, they get a higher taste. So if we just let go of the reins, then the horses, if there's 5 horses there, they're just going to go everywhere. And the intelligence, the driver is going to become bewildered. He's lost the reins. He's got no control over the horses. And then the soul is just sitting there being led into a disastrous situation. So when the intelligence is bewildered and the mind is taking over, then at that point we actually don't have any freedom. We're just being led by the senses. Just like you see sometimes animals get trapped by some bait because they have no choice, in the sense that they sometimes even can see there's some danger, but they're so attracted by some piece of bait that they just go for it. They say that sometimes the mice are clever, they can get the cheese from the trap and not get caught. They know there's danger there, but sometimes they're not so clever, they're not so fast. Same with the fish. They say that the fish, they can see the bait and they know there's a hook and there's danger and they can see through the water. Just like yesterday we could see when we cast a shadow over the water and there was some fish. And the fish would move because they could see there was a shadow cast over them. So they can sense the danger, but because they're attracted to a sense object, they go into that danger in order to try to catch the object of desire without getting caught. And we can be like that too. The nature of the material world is that there is always a price to pay. Either we've paid it in our past life because we have karma to enjoy now, or we have to pay in the future life. Yeah, so this word dhumra appears smoke coloured. So I would just like to read a little bit from the Bhagavad Gita on this subject of the intelligence becoming bewildered. So there's a process actually of this, and it's interesting because we all experience it, we all have experienced it, and we may well experience it again. But there is actually, if we understand the process of how this works, we can start to analyse it, we can start to observe it, and observing it as being a soul who is no longer bewildered, but we have knowledge that this is what's happening to me, and I have a choice. I I can break free from this sequence. So the sequence is, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. Anyone experienced that? Yep, I did. We experience it, we think about, we look at something and think, oh, that's nice, or that person's nice, or that thing is nice. But of course, at one point or another, that thing didn't exist, but it was some other thing which was nice. So then we develop attachment for it. It's like, okay, hey, that's very nice. And then lust develops. From that attachment, lust develops, oh, I must have it. I must have that person, I must have that thing. And then, in order to have that thing, it motivates us to go to work, it motivates us to behave in certain ways, it motivates us to make some strategy or whatever, we're using your intelligence, like this. And then, somehow or another we don't get that object, or we get it, and it's not all it was cracked up to be. Like, here's a can of lager, everyone's thinking it's great, have a drink of this. Oh, that's rubbish. Or you get this type of car, these cars are really good, and you get one and it's a total lemon, and it's never out the garage. And some people have that bad karma, and or something or other. It's like we see some models who's like, I think they even made it illegal now that you can't be a certain size. Is it 00 or something? Some size of where particularly the ladies, they're really, really thin, and this was a kind of modelling standard. But because some of them were becoming bulimic, anorexic, and it was extremely harmful to their health, even fatal for some of them, then I believe they passed some law that they weren't allowed to have models at a certain size to make sure that they were getting nutrition. Anyway, they see some person modelling it and you think, well, that looks great, and so you see it in the shop window and you get it and you realise, I just look like a sack of potatoes with the same dress. You think, I'll put this dress or this jacket or this on and I'll look as smart as that guy. Felix, you used to do these things, didn't you? I don't mean you used to buy it, but you used to look pretty cool modelling things. And then people would buy on account of Felix's good looks and his ability to pose very nicely. And then they get it and think, I don't quite look as cool as that guy. I just look like, I've just been dragged through a hedge backwards. Or you get the thing, and then it doesn't last that long, the novelty wears off, and think, actually, I was in two minds whether to get this one or the other one, let me get the other one as well. Or sometimes whatever we buy, maybe we want to buy there's one of two or three things we want to buy, it doesn't matter which one we get, we think, oh, I should have got the other one. As soon as you buy it, then the novelty's gone. So this is the nature of Maya, illusion of the material world. This is one of Krishna's energies. We are known as Jivatma. And our nature is, so there's three basic energies. There's the Tatastha Shakti, which is marginal. There's the Antaranga Shakti, the internal or spiritual potency, and there's Bahiranga Shakti, the external energy, just like we say, Bahir Nrsimho. Bahir means that the Lord Nrsimhadev is outside as well as inside, so Bahiranga Shakti. So we have the opportunity, this is the freedom we have, is the freedom to choose to be under the control of Mahamaya or under the control of Krishna's spiritual energy. And when we're under Krishna's control, that doesn't mean to say that this is some kind of hellfire and brimstone control, that we're spending the rest of eternity going, yes, Krishna, no, Krishna, 3 bags full, Krishna. It's not like that. It's loving devotional service. And this is why Krishna doesn't force it. He wants us to make the choice ourselves. He's given us the free will. It's one thing he will never take from us, is our free will. We decide for ourselves where we want to go back to Krishna or not. He's so open-minded that he'll let us do whatever we want, but there's a price to pay, and he'll let us know that. You can do what you like, but there's a price to pay. Or you can come back to me, and then there's no material reaction because this is a world where everybody enjoys eternally. So we develop attachment, and sometimes we get the sense object and we're happy for a little while, but as soon as you get something in the material world, even you get a brand new car, from the day, as soon as you drive out of the showroom, it already loses its value by about 15%. If you were to go turn around, see you in the street 100 yards, round around a bit and come back and say, I don't like it, I want to trade it in, you've already lost about 15-20% on it. So we're actually such a bunch of losers in the material world, aren't we? I don't mean this in a negative way. But there's light at the end of the tunnel. So, or you get the car and you take it around for some time, but I experienced, because I used to work as a mechanic at one time, and even brand new cars would often find themselves in the garage, and just because it was brand new, it doesn't mean to say it's not going to be without trouble. So we put our faith, we put our hope in some object in the material world or some material knowledge, and we build a career and a reputation around some kind of intellectual pursuits, and ultimately it comes to nothing because that knowledge is lost at the end of this life. We can't take it with us, we can't take objects with us, we can't take material knowledge pertaining to material sciences with us. But what we can take with us is anything we invest in Krishna's service. And whatever talents we have, whatever abilities we have, if we just use it in Krishna's service, then that doesn't become a source of misery, then it becomes a source of enjoyment. So we'll just continue reading this process. So from anger, once we're frustrated, if someone or something stops us from enjoying, then we become angry. And then from that anger, complete delusion arises. So we become despondent, or we may plot against somebody, or we may try again in another way, which is not learning our lesson. We're still throwing fuel on the fire. They say no matter how much fuel you put on the fire, you'll never put it out. If you get petrol and you stick it on the fire, even before the petrol gets to the fire, the fumes are igniting, so you can't put the fire out. It will just keep on getting bigger and bigger. And we're thinking the more we try to satisfy our desires, the more we'll be satisfied, but we're not, because we're simply throwing more fuel in the fire. And we're deluding ourselves into thinking we're going to enjoy. Just like the carrot on the stick, donkey is working hard. He's got big bales of straw on the back, or he's got some other burden. That's why they're known as a beast of burden. Poor donkey, he's having to carry so much weight. And he's thinking, if I just take one more step forward, I'm going to get that carrot. I'm nearly there, almost got it. One more. Spends all day like that. So that can be like us in material world, just one more step and we're going to get it. We're going to get that carrot. And at the end of the day, perhaps he gets the carrot, so he thinks, yes, I finally got it. And then next day, same thing again. So this is the work-reward system of the material world. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory, so the donkey forgot that yesterday I did the same thing. It was all day long, and then finally I got the carrot. Or sometimes he doesn't even get the carrot. If the carrot's too nice, the donkey can get it tomorrow. So this is when memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. He can't think for himself. He can't think, wait a minute, what do I need a carrot for anyway? There's plenty of grass at the side of the road. Let me just he can forget it, I'm just going to have some grass. No matter how much he beats me, I'm just going to have some grass. I'm not working for that guy just to get a carrot every day or so. But his intelligence is lost. So, and that happens with us too. We lose intelligence, we do things, we embark on endeavours which are not going to bring a great result, and we don't know it. We can't discriminate that. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So that means that the whole system starts all over again. We start contemplating objects of the senses, and from that, lust, and then frustration of lust, anger, delusion, bewilderment, and memory. Intelligence is lost, fall down into the material pool, contemplate the objects of the senses, and it just goes round and round. So this is called this is what keeps the wheel of samsara, or repeated birth and death, from. This is what keeps it turning. This is what is giving energy or fuel to that cycle of birth and death. But we can step off from it. Sometimes people think, oh, stop the world, I want to get off. And this is really what they're looking for. The soul deep down in there, beyond those layers of body, mind and intelligence. The soul is crying out for Krishna, but it's become so bewildered that it doesn't really know what it's looking for. And then sometimes when we do some Harinam or chanting procession on the streets, you see people that are just really momentarily awakened to Krishna consciousness, because it's natural. They connect with Krishna. So this is actually the next. So that was spoken about by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 62 and 63. And then 64 actually tells you what is the way out of this. A person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control their senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. So therefore, if we try to experiment, engage in Krishna consciousness, engage your mind and senses in the path of bhakti yoga, and make a little trial of not pursuing the materialistic things which will bind us, and just make that comparison. There is no comparison. The comparison is night and day, actually. Of course, it's even because we have such a conditioning, then even sometimes we have knowledge of what is good and what is not good, and we fall into still our old ways. But that's understandable because conditioning is there. But gradually, by engaging more and more in Krishna's service, then the conditioning will subside. And in due course, our momentum in Krishna consciousness will overpower the momentum of the mind and the senses. And this way the material attraction just pales into insignificance, because as Prabhupada was explaining in the Leelamrita, that Krishna means all attractive. So the attractiveness we find in the material world is actually a dim reflection of the attraction coming from Krishna. It's only a dim glimmer of his attractive potency. So when we're attracted to something in the material world, I'll give an example. There was, when Prabhupada was in New York in the early days, 1966, there was one old wino came in. So he was living in the Bowery, which is considered to be the pits, basically. Where there was people just lying around, wasted on meths, amphetamines, alcohol, whatever. Prabhupada was living there. Before that, he was actually staying in the kind of a higher class area, but he realised that his Krishna consciousness movement wasn't going to get any foothold there, so he went to where the people needed it most. And even sometimes he would have to step over people passed out in the corridor to get into his flat. I believe there was even one person who'd passed away. He had to step over to get into his flat. But so back in those days, then Prabhupada was speaking to a lot of people, particularly young people, who had basically tried to enjoy their senses to the max, but they realised that this material world somehow or another wasn't doing it, so they were looking for a way out. And when they heard Prabhupada speak, they could understand that this is a way out. So we're looking for some alternative. But in the material world, the material energy is described in the Bhagavad Gita as endlessly mutable. So the alternative is not another mutation of the material energy. The alternative is the spiritual energy. And this is when our intelligence becomes, as mentioned here, one's intelligence is soon well established. So it doesn't take long to practice Krishna consciousness, where we can look back and realise, yeah, I never thought I'd be able to give these things up, but here I am now by Krishna's mercy. And Krishna comes, his mercy comes in many forms, through the chanting of the holy name, through his words, and through prasadam. So we'll just close there. If anyone's got any comments or questions. Yes.
The comment is just about that, according to the Veda and other Vedic literature, the reproductive function of the body has a strong connection with the function of mind and brain, and or the indulgence in sexual activity actually affects that function of our mind and brain, and that they perform much poorer. And this one devotee put it in a book called Brain Game,
Oh, yeah.
but they originally wanted to call it Brain Drain. And actually, by the sexual restraint, Ayurveda explains and also speaks elaborately in this book how the function of mind and brain improves significantly, and also there is so much mental health issues in the modern day, and actually that's one of the reasons is that overindulgence too much sexual activity that is being kind of promoted very much in the modern day, and actually people who practice celibacy or a certain degree of sexual restraint, they start looking much more brighter, effulgent, like a brown pages.
Mhm.
I can see personal experience of 18 years of celibacy has improved the function of brain, call it as brain before.
Yes, nice comment, thanks. Yeah, that book by Danavir Maharaj, he lists many people who were celibate over millennia. So if you wanted to read that, probably have. Don't know if we have any in the shop, but
Got a couple of books if anybody
if anybody want to borrow it, we can see Raghunath. Brain Gain. And this is a fact. Shivaram Swami was giving a talk recently that without discipline, no one ever did anything of any consequence in the world. So we never find someone who's totally out of control doing something very substantially beneficial in any way. So, and typically also they used to, the old-fashioned or the real kind of animalistic concept of a man was, a man who could have many women, but actually the real thing was a man is someone who can restrain himself. People respect that, someone who can restrain himself, not someone who's just a gross animal. And so Prabhupada talks about intellectual animalism, that if the humans are no better than the animals by simply all they do is eating, sleeping, mating and defending, then how are they any different or better than animals? And sometimes humans are quite happy to accept, yeah, we're just animals. So if they want to accept that, then that's up to themselves, that's their choice. But our choice and our understanding is that we're more than that. We have these material needs, we have these material facilities, but they're not the all in all. And there's something higher than that as well, and it's not just imagination. It can be perceived, it can be experienced. So just to finish off on this system of contemplating objects of the senses, developing attachment, etc. So if we find ourselves becoming attached to something or becoming lusted, we can just think back, okay, why am I desiring this so much? Why am I contemplating this sense object? We can understand that what's happened is the intensification of the contemplation has developed attachment, and that intensifies, becomes lust, and then somewhere along the line that lust gets frustrated, and it may be frustrated immediately, it may be frustrated in years later or decades later. So we have to, in order to become intelligent, or to give the intelligence room to grow, then controlling of the senses, regulated principles of freedom they're called. So just like in the prison, one follows the regulations, then they get free. If you don't follow them, the regulations in the prison house, then you get some more time added on. So this is Durgadam, and this is one of the things to consider for today. Okay, we'll just stop at that point. Thanks everybody. Hare Krishna. Iskon Guru Vinda Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki.